Story 1. I'm 24 now, and I'll never forget what happened last year when I was 23 and bought my first Labubu doll. I worked at a mall, and there was this pop-up store selling them. Everyone was going crazy over these things. My coworker kept saying how cute they were, but honestly, I thought they looked kind of creepy. Still, I figured I'd get one just to see what the hype was about. I brought it home and set it on my dresser facing away from my bed. I didn't want those teeth looking at me while I slept. That first night, everything was fine. But the second night, I woke up around 2 in the morning feeling like something was off. I turned on my phone light and looked at the dresser. The Labubu had moved. It was now facing my bed, staring directly at me. I thought maybe I'd bumped the dresser earlier and forgotten about it. I got up, turned it around again, and went back to sleep. The next morning, it was facing me again. I lived alone, and my door was locked. Nobody had been in my apartment. I started to feel uneasy, but I convinced myself I was moving it in my sleep somehow. That night, I decided to test it. Before bed, I took a photo of the Labubu on my dresser. Making sure it was facing the wall, I put my phone on my nightstand and went to sleep. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to a scratching sound. It was coming from the dresser. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The Labubu was in a completely different position now. It was standing upright when I'd left it sitting, and it was facing me again. I checked the photo I'd taken. In the picture, it was sitting and facing away. Now it was standing and facing toward me. My hands were shaking. I got up and shoved the doll into my closet, shutting the door. I heard something fall inside, but I didn't open it. I just went back to bed and tried to calm down. The next day, I opened the closet to get dressed. The Labubu wasn't where I'd left it. It was on the top shelf, which was at least 6 feet high. There was no way it could have gotten up there on its own. I grabbed it and threw it in a trash bag. I took it straight to the dumpster outside my building. 2 days later, I came home from work and found the Labubu sitting on my kitchen counter. Same doll. I recognized the little mark on its ear. I don't know how it got back into my apartment, but it was there. I was terrified. I grabbed it, drove to a gas station 3 miles away, and threw it in their dumpster. A week passed. Nothing happened. I thought it was finally over. Then one night, I woke up to the feeling of something touching my face. I opened my eyes, and the Labubu was on my pillow, inches from my face. I screamed and threw it across the room. That's when I knew I had to do something drastic. I took the doll to my parents' fireplace and burned it. I watched the whole thing melt and char. When it was nothing but ashes, I flushed them down the toilet. I never saw it again after that. But I still have nightmares about waking up and seeing it on my pillow. And I refuse to go near those dolls ever again. I'm 27 years old now, and this happened last year when I was living with my girlfriend in a small apartment. She was obsessed with collecting toys and figurines, so when Labubu dolls became popular, she had to have one. She ordered it online, and when it arrived, she was so excited. She put it on a shelf in our living room with her other collectibles. I thought it was ugly. Those teeth, those eyes. Something about it just felt wrong. But she loved it, so I didn't say anything. About a week after she brought it home, I started having strange dreams. I dreamed that I was paralyzed in bed and something small was crawling up my body toward my face. I could feel its weight, but I couldn't move or scream. I'd wake up in a cold sweat every time. My girlfriend said I was stressed from work, but the dreams kept happening every single night. I started dreading going to sleep. One night, I woke up from the nightmare and couldn't fall back asleep. I got up to get some water and walked past the living room. That's when I saw it. The Labubu was on the floor, right in the middle of the room. It had been on the shelf when we went to bed. I know, because my girlfriend always made sure her display was perfect before we turned in for the night. I picked it up and put it back on the shelf. The next morning, I mentioned it to my girlfriend. She said, I must have knocked it over when I walked by, but I hadn't gone near the shelf. I let it go. 2 nights later, I woke up again. This time I felt something on my chest. I opened my eyes and the Labubu was sitting on me, just sitting there, staring at my face. I yelled and knocked it off. It hit the wall and fell behind the bed. My girlfriend woke up and asked what was wrong. I told her, but she said, I must have been sleepwalking and put it there myself. She thought I was playing a prank on her. I wasn't. I refused to sleep in that room the next night. I crashed on the couch. Around 4 in the morning, I heard something fall in the bedroom. Then I heard my girlfriend scream. I ran in and found her sitting up in bed, crying. She said she woke up and felt something pulling her hair. When she opened her eyes, the Labubu was right next to her head on the pillow, and strands of her hair were caught in its hand. We both saw it. We both knew something was wrong. That morning, we took the doll outside and smashed it with a hammer. We threw the pieces in a dumpster across town. For a few days, everything seemed normal. Then my girlfriend started getting sick. She had headaches, nausea, and she couldn't sleep. She went to the doctor, but they couldn't find anything wrong with her. It got worse. She started seeing things. She said she'd see the Labubu in reflections, in mirrors, in windows, in her phone screen, always watching her. She became paranoid and depressed. We ended up breaking up because she couldn't handle living in that apartment anymore. She moved back in with her parents. I stayed, and the weird stuff stopped for me. But last I heard, she still sees it sometimes. She's in therapy now, and she won't talk to me about it. I feel guilty. I think bringing that doll into our home ruined her life. Story 3, and I'm 23 now, but I was 22 when this happened. I was in college, living in a dorm with my roommate Jenny. Jenny was really into trends and aesthetics. When Labubu dolls started popping up all over social media, she bought 3 of them. She lined them up on the windowsill in our room. I told her they creeped me out, but she just laughed and said I was being dramatic. The first week, nothing happened. But then Jenny started acting strange. She became really attached to the dolls. She'd talk to them, rearrange them, take pictures with them constantly. It was weird, but I figured it was just her being quirky. One night, I woke up and heard whispering. It sounded like it was coming from Jenny's side of the room. I looked over, and she was sitting up in bed, facing the windowsill. She was whispering to the Labubu dolls. I asked her what she was doing, and she didn't respond. She just kept whispering. I got out of bed and walked over to her. I touched her shoulder, and she jumped. She looked at me like she didn't know who I was. Then she blinked and said, "Oh, sorry, I was having a nightmare." But her eyes were open the whole time. She hadn't been asleep. The next day, I asked her about it. She didn't remember any of it. She said she'd slept through the night and didn't have any dreams. That didn't make sense, but I didn't push it. A few nights later, it happened again. This time, I didn't wake her. I just watched. She sat up, walked over to the windowsill, picked up one of the Labubu dolls, and held it like a baby. She rocked it back and forth and whispered to it. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it sounded like she was singing a lullaby. This went on for almost 20 minutes. Then she put the doll back, got into bed, and went back to sleep like nothing had happened. In the morning, she had no memory of it. I started recording her at night with my phone. I wanted proof. The videos showed her getting up, interacting with the dolls, and then going back to bed. When I showed her, she broke down crying. She said she felt like something was controlling her, and she didn't know how to stop it. We decided to get rid of the dolls. We took them to a donation bin off campus and left them there. That night, Jenny slept normally. No whispering, no sleepwalking. We both thought it was over. But 3 days later, the dolls were back. They were sitting on the windowsill in the exact same spots. We had no idea how they got there. We'd locked our door, and nobody else had a key except the RA. We asked her, and she said she hadn't been in our room. Jenny was terrified. She refused to touch them. I grabbed all three and threw them in the trash chute. We heard them tumble down into the dumpster below. The next morning, Jenny was gone. Her bed was made. Her stuff was still there, but she wasn't. I called her phone. No answer. I checked with our friends. Nobody had seen her. I reported her missing to campus security. They found her 6 hours later, sitting in the campus chapel, holding one of the Labubu dolls. She was rocking back and forth, whispering the same thing over and over. It wants to stay. It wants to stay. She didn't recognize anyone. She was completely out of it. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. I visited her once, and she told me the dolls had voices. They'd been telling her to do things, to go places. She said she couldn't fight it anymore. Jenny dropped out of school. Last I heard, she's still getting treatment. I never saw those dolls again, but I'll never forget the way she looked at them, like they were more real to her than I was. Story 4. I'm 28, and I was 27 when my daughter asked me to buy her a Labubu doll. She was 8 at the time. She'd seen them online and begged me for weeks. I finally gave in and ordered one for her birthday. When it arrived, she was over the moon. She named it Poppy and carried it everywhere. She slept with it, ate with it, even tried to bring it to school. At first, I thought it was sweet. She'd always been a shy kid, and having a comfort toy seemed to help her. But after a couple of weeks, I started noticing changes in her behavior. She stopped playing with her other toys. She only wanted to be with the Labubu. She'd sit in her room for hours, whispering to it. When I asked her what she was talking about, she'd say, "Poppy tells me secrets." I thought she just had an active imagination. But then she started saying disturbing things. She told me Poppy didn't like me. She said Poppy told her I was mean and that she should ignore me. I tried to laugh it off, but it bothered me. My daughter had never talked to me like that before. One night, I went to check on her before bed. She wasn't in her room. I searched the whole house and found her standing in the backyard in her pajamas, holding the Labubu. It was raining, and she was soaking wet. I ran outside and asked her what she was doing. She said, "Poppy wanted to go outside. I brought her in, dried her off, and put her to bed. I took the doll and locked it in the hall closet. I didn't want her having access to it during the night." The next morning, the closet door was open, and the doll was back in my daughter's room. She was holding it when I woke her up for school. I asked her how she got it, and she said, "Poppy came back to me." I started to feel genuinely afraid. I told my daughter we needed to get rid of the doll. She screamed and cried and begged me not to. She said Poppy would be mad at her, but I didn't care. I took it and put it in a trash bag. I drove to a dumpster on the other side of town and threw it away. My daughter didn't speak to me for 2 days. She was furious, but slowly, she started acting like herself again. She played with her old toys, talked to me like she used to, and seemed happier. I thought we'd finally moved past it. A month later, I was cleaning out the garage and found a box I didn't recognize. I opened it, and inside was the Labubu doll. It was dirty and smelled terrible, but it was the same one. I have no idea how it got into my garage. I didn't tell my daughter. I took it straight to the fireplace and burned it. I watched it melt into nothing. That night, my daughter woke up screaming. I ran to her room, and she was inconsolable. She said Poppy came to her in a dream and told her she was angry. She said Poppy was going to hurt me because I burned her. I held my daughter and told her it was just a nightmare. But I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the doll and how it kept coming back. The next day, I was in a car accident. A truck ran a red light and hit me. I survived, but I broke my arm and had a concussion. The police said it was a freak accident, that the other driver didn't see the light, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't a coincidence. My daughter never mentioned the doll again, but sometimes I catch her staring at the spot where she used to keep it, and I wonder if she still hears Poppy's voice. Story 5. I'm 26 now. This happened last year when I was 25 and working from home. I bought a Labubu doll as a joke. My friend had one, and we laughed about how creepy it looked. I thought it'd be funny to have one on my desk as a conversation piece during video calls. So I ordered one online. When it arrived, I unboxed it and set it up on my desk next to my computer. It sat there for a few days, and I didn't think much of it. But then I started noticing things. Files on my computer would be open when I came back from breaks. documents I hadn't touched in weeks. Photos I didn't remember opening. I figured it was a glitch, or maybe I'd clicked on something by accident. But then my webcam light started turning on by itself. I'd be sitting at my desk, and suddenly the little green light would be on. I'd check my settings, and no programs were using the camera. I ran antivirus scans. Nothing. I even put tape over the camera, but the light would still turn on. One day, I was on a work call, and a coworker asked me, "What's that behind you?" I looked at my video feed and saw the Labubu doll in the frame, but it wasn't on my desk anymore. It was on the shelf behind me, which was a good 5 feet away from where I'd left it. I ended the call early and checked the shelf. The doll was there. I hadn't moved it. I started to feel paranoid. I moved it back to my desk and made a mental note of its exact position. The next day, it was on the shelf again. I checked my security camera footage. I'd set up a cheap camera in my apartment after a break in Scare a few months earlier. I rewound the footage to the previous night. At 3:47 a.m., the Labubu moved. I'm not exaggerating. It stood up, walked across my desk, climbed onto the shelf, and sat down. I watched it happen. It moved like it was alive. I felt sick. I grabbed the doll and threw it in a box. I sealed it with tape and put it in my car. I drove to a bridge outside the city and threw the box into the river. I watched it sink. When I got home, I checked my computer. There were new files on my desktop. Photos, dozens of them. They were pictures of me sleeping, working, eating, showering. Someone had been taking pictures of me inside my apartment. The timestamps went back weeks. I called the police. They came and searched my apartment. They found a tiny camera hidden in the corner of my bedroom, disguised as a screw. It had been there the whole time. They traced it back to my landlord. He'd been spying on me. He was arrested. But here's the thing. The camera wasn't connected to my computer. The photos couldn't have been transferred to my desktop. The police had no explanation for how they got there. I moved out of that apartment immediately. I don't know if the Labubu had anything to do with the camera being found. Maybe it was a coincidence, but I can't shake the feeling that it wanted me to know, that it was trying to show me something. I still think about those photos, and I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't thrown that doll away. Story 6. I'm 25 now, but I was 24 when my boyfriend bought me a Labubu doll for Valentine's Day. I didn't ask for it, but he thought it was cute. I put it on my nightstand and didn't think much of it. The first week was fine. But then I started having sleep paralysis. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, unable to move, and I'd see shadows in the room. I'd feel pressure on my chest like something was sitting on me. I'd experienced sleep paralysis before, so I wasn't too alarmed. But it started happening every single night, and every time I'd see the same thing. A figure standing at the foot of my bed, watching me. It was small, about the size of a child, and it never moved. It just stood there. I told my boyfriend, and he suggested I see a doctor. I did, and they said it was stress-related. They gave me sleeping pills, but they didn't help. The paralysis kept happening. One night, I woke up from an episode and managed to move. I turned on the light and looked at the foot of the bed. Nothing was there. But when I looked at my nightstand, the Labubu was gone. I found it on the floor at the foot of the bed, exactly where I'd been seeing the figure. I started to connect the dots. The sleep paralysis had started right after I got the doll. The figure I kept seeing was the same size and shape as the Labubu. I decided to get rid of it. I gave it to a coworker who collected toys. I told her I didn't want it anymore, and she was happy to take it. That night, I slept fine. No paralysis, no shadows. I felt relieved. A week later, my coworker called me. She was crying. She said she'd been having terrible nightmares ever since she brought the doll home. She said she'd wake up and feel like something was choking her. She asked if I'd experienced anything like that. I lied and said no. I didn't want to scare her. She told me she was going to throw it away. I said that was a good idea. 2 days later, she didn't show up to work. I texted her, but she didn't respond. I called her, and someone else answered. It was her mom. She told me my coworker had been hospitalized. She'd tried to hurt herself. Her mom said she'd been acting strange and paranoid, saying something was after her. I felt horrible. I should have warned her. I should have told her the truth about the doll. I visited her in the hospital, and she looked terrible. She was pale and shaking. She told me the doll was cursed. She said she'd seen things, felt things, and she couldn't take it anymore. She's out of the hospital now, but she's not the same. She quit her job and moved to a different city. I tried to apologize, but she won't talk to me. I don't know what happened to the Labubu. Part of me hopes it's gone, but part of me knows it's out there, waiting for the next person to bring it home. Story 7, I'm 26. And this is the hardest story for me to tell, because I still don't fully understand what happened. Last year, I was shopping at a thrift store and found a Labubu doll in the toy section. It was dirty and looked like it had been through a lot, but I thought it was a good find. Those things were expensive new, and this one was only $5. I bought it, took it home, and cleaned it up. I displayed it on a shelf in my living room with some other knick-knacks. It looked fine once it was clean. But a few days later, I started smelling something awful in my apartment. It smelled like rot, like something had died. I searched everywhere. I checked the trash, the fridge, under the furniture. Nothing. The smell got worse. It was so bad I couldn't have people over. I called maintenance, and they couldn't find the source either. They said maybe something had died in the walls, but they didn't find anything. One night, I was sitting on the couch, and the smell was unbearable. I looked at the shelf where the Labubu was, and I noticed something. There was a dark stain spreading on the wall behind it. It looked wet. I got up and touched it. It was sticky and smelled like the rot. I moved the Labubu, and the stain was coming from behind where it had been sitting. But there was no leak, no logical explanation. The wall was dry everywhere else. I grabbed the doll and inspected it. That's when I noticed something inside its mouth. There was something black stuck between its teeth. I pulled it out with tweezers. It was a clump of hair, human hair. I dropped the doll and backed away. I didn't know what to think. I grabbed it, threw it in a trash bag, and took it back to the thrift store. I left it in the donation bin after hours. The smell in my apartment disappeared the next day. The stain on the wall faded. Everything went back to normal. But a month later, I got a message on social media from someone I didn't know. They sent me a photo. It was the Labubu doll. The message said, "Did you used to own this?" I didn't respond. They sent another message. "It has your address written inside. I think it wants to come home." I blocked them immediately. I don't know who they were or how they found me, but I moved out of that apartment 2 weeks later. I never found out where that doll came from or why it had hair in its mouth. But I know I'll never buy anything from a thrift store again.